Welcome to Regulate and Rewire, an anxiety and depression podcast where we discuss the things I wish someone would have taught me earlier in my healing journey. I'm your host, Amanda Armstrong, and I'll be sharing my steps, my missteps, client experiences, and tangible research-based tools to help you regulate your nervous system, rewire your mind, and reclaim your life. Thanks for being here. Now let's dive in. Today, I want to give you a very specific framework for putting together a lot of the pieces of tools and concepts that we have previously talked about on the podcast. This is something that I do with almost all of our clients at some point, and I call this a regulation game plan. And I will drop a link in the show notes for you to download a worksheet that you can use if you are more of a visual learner like I am. That could also be helpful to pull up really quick and just reference, because I'm going to describe it in a little bit. And this is a quick note for any of you who are coming to this podcast for the first time today. You are going to get a lot more out of this particular episode if you have first listened to what I consider our foundation episodes. And so that is episodes 1 through 6. Remember, they're just a half hour. If you listen to me on double speed, you'll be able to get through those pretty quick. And that just gives you context for a lot of the language that I use, a lot of terms that may be specific to myself and my practice. But in those first 6 episodes, you are going to learn more about how to understand anxiety and depression through a nervous system lens. And that also includes the 3-part anxiety mini-series where I talk about how to map out your nervous system and various ways of regulating. And this regulation game plan is going to be kind of the next step from that. So once you have mapped out your nervous system, and for those of you who this is a new term, that simply means that you are aware of the different thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and behaviors that tell you that you are either in that yellow zone of activation, feeling anxious, or in that red zone of shutdown. So when you say, "Oh, I'm really overwhelmed, I'm really shut down right now," how do you know? What are the thoughts you're thinking, the feelings you're having, the bodily sensations, behaviors that you are doing or not doing? Same thing. If you're like, "God, I'm so anxious right now." Well, how do you know? What is that experience like for you? So that is what I mean when I say nervous system mapping. And that's something, at least that awareness, you don't have to have done a formal mapping of it, but having at least awareness of the various symptoms or sensations that go along with activation or shutdown is going to be critical for making a regulation game plan. And then also having experimented with some of these various somatic tools, practices, so that you know what is the most helpful for you in these various states. So what is a regulation game plan? Think about it this way. The same way a professional athlete might watch game day film over and over and over again to create their game plan for how they want to win the next soccer match. And the game plan they come up with might include things like, well, if the other team makes this play, then this is what we're going to do. Or if we find ourselves in this situation, then here is our plan for that, and so on. This is where you are making your game plan for when you are dysregulated in either that yellow zone of activation or that red shutdown state. And just like those athletes need to have extensive awareness and knowledge of the sport that they play in order to create these game plans, this is also true for creating a regulation game plan. So like I mentioned a minute ago, this is where you organize a lot of the previous awareness and healing tools that you have already identified into what becomes a bit of a map on how to move from states of dysregulation to regulation. Now, regardless where you are in your healing, this can be an essential framework or really helpful framework, even now, to say, okay, eventually I want to have the awareness, I want to have the toolbox to be able to organize them in this way. So before walking you through this exercise, I want to remind you about a couple different concepts that are going to come into play. So first is to remember that different tools work for different nervous system states. So most of our clients will create at least 2 distinct regulation game plans. One for when they find themselves in that anxious or activated, that yellow zone state, and another for when they find themselves in a more stuck, depressed, or shut down red zone state. And in the worksheets I'm going to provide in the show notes, I will give you a printout worksheet for both of those. So, first, you need to be able to identify what state you are in to know the most effective tools to help you move towards regulation. So, again, this is where it can be helpful to have done some of that nervous system mapping, maybe on paper or maybe just in your own mind, starting to pay attention to some of those thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations that go along with these different states. But this exercise takes it one step further than kind of general awareness or mapping of your states, because you're not just identifying the thoughts, emotions, sensations, and behaviors in this broad category of this is what my yellow zone feels like, or this is what my red zone feels like. But we're going to get even one step more granular than that. And we are going to look at how do these signs or symptoms vary depending on if you are just a little bit anxious or you're having a panic attack. If you're just a little bit overwhelmed versus completely disconnected and shut down. So for this game plan, you are going to explore how you experience symptoms of activation or shutdown on a scale of 1 to 3. So 1 being just a little bit activated or shut down. Number 2 would be moderately activated or shut down. And a 3 would be severely activated or shut down, whatever that looks like for you. And I just want to put a quick disclaimer, a reminder that I use the words activated and anxious interchangeably, as well as shut down or depressed pretty interchangeably. And so when you hear one of those terms, you can choose the one that you feel like most resonates with the language that you use. So this leads me into the next concept, which is something I call tool layering. It is very, very unlikely, and I hate to burst some of your bubbles. I wish there was a magic tool that got you from a 10 to a 2, but it is very, very unlikely that you are going to discover any single tool or practice that consistently takes you from feeling really, really anxious to feeling totally great and calm, or from being really, really disconnected and shut down to being energized and joyful. That's just not how this works. Again, if you call that nervous system ladder back into your mind, think about it truly like a ladder. You are going to do one practice, one tool at a time, and that's going to take you up one step up that ladder, moving towards regulation. So when it comes to regulating the nervous system, you must first meet your nervous system where it is. And then slowly, by layering one tool on top of the other, walk yourself back up that nervous system ladder and towards regulation. So for example, anxiety is an activated and an energized state. Your physiology, the things that are happening inside your body, are priming you for movement. If you are on the verge of a panic attack, so on a scale of 1 to 3, let's say you're at a 2.5. So if a 3 is an actual panic attack, you're at a 2.5. You're real close. Trying to take a deep breath or to sit down and hit play on a meditation probably will not be helpful. In fact, it might be very, very, very unhelpful because you are taking your physiology that is primed and ready to move and you are forcing it into stillness, which is going to feel unsafe. As far as your nervous system is concerned, there is a mountain lion around the corner and you've just decided to sit down and pick flowers. Your nervous system is like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's time to flee or to fight. And so in that moment of intense activation, it does not feel safe for your nervous system to chill out. So you first need tools or practices that meet your nervous system in that state of mobility to validate that experience and then help you to move some of that stress or survival energy out of your body. Even if you logically know that you're safe, but if your body doesn't feel safe, we have to work in and through the body first. Anytime you are able to recognize that you feel anxious, that should be a signal to you that this is your body's attempt to fight or flee from whatever it is perceiving as dangerous, even if that danger is just your own thoughts. Or sometimes we don't know why we feel anxious. It's something unidentifiable to our conscious mind, but something feels familiar to our body and is registering as threatening. And in that moment, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you figure out exactly what's creating that sensation for you. With this regulation game plan and this awareness of how activation feels in your body, the goal here is to, 1, recognize the state you're in. Number 2, gauge the general intensity. Does it feel 1, 2, or 3? And then 3 is to insert an appropriate tool to help you regulate. You can explore the who, what, when, where, why you got to feeling anxious or shut down later when you're more regulated. A regulation game plan is just supposed to help you in that moment. For example, this is a story from my own life. Just a couple weeks ago, I walked out of a post office in tears. The post office, friends, I had 3 packages to mail, but I walked out of this post office absolutely in tears and on the verge of a panic attack. I was so dysregulated. And yes, me, the ringleader of this circus, the person who teaches people how to regulate their nervous systems for a living, even I get totally tossed out of whack some days. So logically, it did not make sense for me to be so overwhelmed by that post office experience. But in that moment, it didn't matter whether it made sense why I was reacting this way or not. I was overwhelmed. I was totally dysregulated. And now in that moment was not the time to try to figure out why I was feeling this way. In that moment was the time for me to do whatever I needed to do to become more regulated. So how did tool layering look in this particular situation? So I'm activated. But I'm also probably activated on the verge of shutdown. So I'm right up there. Like I said, I'm about to panic. I walked out of the post office. I had at the time, for some context, I had my husband and my 2 kids waiting in the car in the parking lot, and we were headed to the county fair. And I was like, we'll just stop by the post office real quick. Oh, I was wrong. It was not real quick. And it was rough. So the walking away from the post office to the car was actually probably the first step in regulating, because it kept my body in motion and let me literally flee the scene. So once I was in the car, that's when the minute I stopped moving, so I sat down in the car, shut the door, and that's actually when my anxiety re-peaked and I started to panic a little bit. Again, logically, I know this was the post office. It's 3 packages I had to drop off. I'm in the car. I'm safe. Logically, I knew this. It didn't matter. So for me, this near panic attack looked like really fast, shallow breathing, tightness in my throat, and tears. So that's how I experience this most often. And so what I did then was, my husband tried talking to me and I just put my hand up. My kid tried talking to me and I just said, Mom has big feelings. She needs a minute. And we've done a lot of that. So he knows to kind of give me that minute. And I just let myself keep breathing how I was breathing. I didn't try to take a really calm breath too soon. I just brought awareness to it. And then I intentionally made my hands into a fist. And so I'm going to breathe pretty quick so you can hear how it hears. I know that this sound sometimes can make listeners feel anxious, but essentially my breathing sounded like, and at first I didn't try to take that deep breath. I just intentionally met my breath where it was. And so instead of just unintentionally, I started to do that on purpose with really tight fists. And when I felt like I could handle it, I had to kind of let some of that intensity just edge off with time. I slowly started to deepen my breath and slow my breath, but really gently. So it went from, and then I shift from my mouth breathing to my nose breathing, all while gently opening my fists as well. So for me, it's really helpful when I can tighten my fists when I'm feeling like this, because I'm validating, right, this need to fight. For me, I know that my default survival mode is fight. Some people it's flee, fawn, freeze, mine is fight. So as I'm essentially hyperventilating a little, I clench my fists, and then as I gently open my fists, it also invites a gentle releasing of my breath as well. So again, this is what works for me. Some of you might be able to take this and it totally works for you too. Others of you are going to have to come up with your own way to layer tools. So after I kind of released my fists, I was able to get my breath to a place where I could keep it steady. And then what I did, again, I'm in a car, so I'm doing tools that work in my setting. I did an inner ear and neck massage technique that helps to activate my vagus nerve, which helps me to regulate and reset, shifting me just 1% more towards my parasympathetic nervous system. Then I did a few physiological sigh breaths. So those are a double inhale with an extended exhale. And within 2 to 3 minutes, I was back down to a 1. I wasn't chill, but I was definitely out of the risk of having another panic attack. So like I said, we were on our way to the county fair. And when we got out of the car, also, my 3-year-old wanted to give me a hug and a drink of his water, because we know that hugs and sipping water can help us with our, like, quote, feelings. So he goes, "Mama, I help you make your big feelings small." So there was some co-regulation for me, even to my tiny human. And then I noticed, right, because I'm not going to say I did these things and it was perfect. No, I noticed for the first hour or so at the county fair, my system was still pretty sensitive. I noticed I was really quick to be agitated anytime something wasn't totally comfortable or predictable. But again, each time I noticed that activation rising, I would insert a regulating breath or just a quick little shakeout practice, something that for me on my game plan falls in more that 1 or 2 category. And so this is to illustrate how there's going to be different tools that work when you're at a level 1, 2, or 3. Also, there is a series of tools that you are going to need when you're at the 3. Is there certain tools that just get you to a 2? And then when you're at that 2, what are the other tools that get you to a 1, or even just keep you at a 2, that keep you from progressing up to a 3? And so I was able to do this in real time pretty quickly because I have previously spent a lot of time in the trial and error phase, the awareness and exploration phase of creating a regulation game plan. So I know what it feels like in my body to be at a level 1, 2, or 3 of activation or shutdown. And I know now the specific tools that support me most at each stage. Circling back to this regulation game plan. This particular exercise helps you to explore and know, 1, what state am I in and at what intensity? And how do I know that I'm in that state? And the second thing it helps you to explore is what helps me to regulate when I am there in that state at that level. So as you can see in the attached worksheet, there are 3 columns to this game plan. The first column is just 1, 2, and 3 to represent the intensity of dysregulation that is occurring. The next column is where you will identify the different thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, and behaviors that show up and inform you that you are mildly, moderately, or intensely anxious or shut down. And then that third column is your game plan. This is where you list out the people, places, things, tools, practices, resources, etc., that help you move up the nervous system ladder and towards regulation. And even if you haven't done any formal somatic work, polyvagal exercises, etc., with a practitioner within my membership or with your therapist or anyone else, you still have in your pocket certain things that you know help you when you're feeling really anxious. Even if some of those things are, I end up scrolling on social media, or I go and I drink really cold water, or when I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I go outside and it helps. And so you may not be putting things on your regulation game plan like a vagal toning ear massage or a somatic containment posture. Like some of the people inside my membership who've gone through our one-on-one coaching program, they know some of these specific somatic and polyvagal exercises that work with their physiology. I would love to be able to get some of those on your game plan and to personally support you in making this. But even right now, without any formal work on your nervous system, you know certain things that help you. Now, you might say, I don't think that scrolling on social media is the most helpful way for me to regulate. But if that's a tool you have right now, identify that as a tool that you have right now. And one other side note on this exercise, you have heard me talk in previous podcasts about two categories of tools that we help our clients work through: reactive and proactive tools. So again, reactive tools are the in the moment tools and practices. Like, I'm already there, I'm already dysregulated, now what? Whereas proactive tools are more like the daily regulation practices and lifestyle changes that you make habitually to create a more regulated baseline for yourself, to increase your capacity over time, etc. So when it comes to a regulation game plan, we are focused on and working with reactive tools. This is a game plan for the in the moment tools and practices because you're already there. You're already feeling anxious or depressed, and you want the in the moment tools to reverse that spiral. So these are tools that help you to poke holes in your stress bucket once you feel it getting full or overflowing. And as you step into exploring and creating your own regulating game plans, I want you to again remember this. You must first meet your nervous system where it is. So as much as it might feel good in your game plan when you're feeling anxious to write, do a meditation when you're at a level 3. That's not practical. So when you're feeling activated or anxious, your system is in an energized state, primed for movement. The goal with the tools is first to discharge that unneeded stress energy and then layer on and invite yourself into more calm and grounded practices. And sometimes, especially with anxiety, you might just have to let a panic attack run its course. And then the focus becomes, instead of trying to forcibly stop a panic attack, once the intensity has worn off, then it becomes, what tools can I use to recover from that, to return to a felt sense of self and safety. And when you're in that shutdown state, this is your system in a low energy, low feeling state. You're beginning to feel disconnected. And the goal in regulating from the shutdown state is to bring connection and mobilization to your system gently. So maybe at a level 1, you might have the capacity to message a friend, to get up and go sit outside or go for a gentle walk. Whereas at a level 3, you may be struggling to get out of bed. And what you might be able to do there is just some activating breath work in bed. Maybe you can muster yourself out of bed and onto the couch instead. Again, bringing gentle movement, mobilizing into your system. Maybe you can do some environment or body orienting exercise. Anything that helps you to feel more present, capable, or connected to yourself or to your surroundings is a great place to start when you're feeling shut down. So the bottom line here is that there are countless ways to regulate, which can simultaneously be the greatest gift and the greatest frustration because you have to take the time and intention to figure out the right game plan that meets the unique needs of your nervous system. And this work can be tough to do on your own, especially when you feel like you are in the trenches of anxiety or depression. And this is where coaching or working with any practitioner that feels supportive for you can be so beneficial, because it can feel hopeless sometimes when you feel like you are trying and just spinning your wheels without anything really feeling helpful. And an example of what this looks like inside Rise, my mental health membership and nervous system healing space, just last week in one of our group coaching calls, I mentioned that the purpose of this membership was not to be an overnight answer to your healing, but to be more of a holding container for the process where you have consistent access to me, our other coaches, guided practices, and over time with titrated participation in the content or the weekly live calls. That is how our members identify and collect these various practices that they know uniquely work for them. And as I shared this, one of the members dropped into the chat and she shared, I've been in this membership 16 months now, and I can tell you this is true. Little by little, I have added to my toolbox, and I'm amazed how powerfully these seemingly simple tools can be in helping me find regulation. A lot of these tools aren't novel. Figuring out how to engage your breath intentionally, doing an ear and neck massage, finding the simple but potent tools for you is the key to this game plan and to nervous system regulation overall. Now, Rise as We, our membership, our one-on-one coaching is just one of the many places you can find this support. There are so many other incredible practitioners out there as well, and many of you already have established relationships with other coaches or other healing practitioners, other therapists. And so if you are listening to this and you try to do this on your own and it feels challenging, I would invite you to send either I would love to provide personal support for you inside one of our coaching programs, or send this episode to your therapist. Bring these worksheets into session and see if there's a way that they can support you in some of the awareness work in that first column, or identifying some of your regulation tools that you already have that you know that work for you, and helping you to create this map for moving through dysregulation to regulation. And for another group of you who are out there who may not be in a place where you are ready or able to invest in support, my promise is always that this podcast will continue to provide as many tangible and helpful information pieces, research pieces, practices that I can think to bring into this space. So to bring this all together, quick review of today's episode with 3 tangible takeaways. Number 1, a regulation game plan creates a tangible map to help move you from a place of dysregulation to regulation. And doing this helps you to orient to the tools that work for you so that you can have quicker access to them in the moments that you need them most. And so a tangible action step for number 1 would be to download the worksheets that I provide for you in the show notes. Takeaway number 2 is that tool layering is essential. There is no one tool that is going to take you from a 3 to a 1. But by meeting yourself where you are somatically, physiologically, you can engage in a layering of practices that move you towards regulation. And the more often you engage in those tools and this layering protocol, the better you're going to get at it. Just like an athlete who practices certain trick plays over and over and over again, so that when they find themselves in that situation they talked about, they can move into that play almost seamlessly. This is what I do with clients to help them move into that play of regulating almost seamlessly when they find themselves in situations of dysregulation. And then number 3 is just another reiteration that if you are having trouble putting this together on your own, please seek out support. Send me a DM or an email, print it out and take it to your next therapy appointment. And of course, I would love to personally support you inside our Rise membership or Restore, our one-on-one anxiety and depression coaching program. But the bottom line is this regulation game plan is really, really powerful, and it can be tough to do without support. So know that I'm here for you if you need it. And as always, I'm sending you hope and healing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Regulate and Rewire podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review to help us get these powerful tools out to even more people who need them. And if you yourself are looking for more personalized support in applying what you've learned today, consider joining me inside Rise, my monthly mental health membership and nervous system healing space, or apply for our one-on-one anxiety and depression coaching program, Restore. I've shared a link for more information to both in the show notes. Again, thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.